This is MacroView Television, and welcome to a brand new edition of Taiwan Outlook, the program that presents the people and the stories on Taiwan. I'm your host, Ray Guo. There are many outstanding overseas Chinese youth, and on today's program, we're delighted to meet one of them. He is Dr. Clark Chen, who's currently the Vice Chairman of Research Academic Affairs of the Department of Neurosurgery at UC San Diego. Welcome to our program, Dr. Chen.
Well, thank you for having me.
Well, it's a pleasure to have you on the program. And Dr. Chen, we understand that you have been emigrated to the United States at the age of 11. Tell us a little bit about your upbringing experience, including your educational experiences in the States and in Taiwan, please.
Oh, well, I grew up in Tainan.
Okay,
and
good.
Immigrated to the United States when I was 11.
11, all right.
And really, the reason we immigrated was that my parents wanted me to have the opportunities that they never had.
Okay.
It is because of their decision that I had an opportunity to study at Stanford, Columbia, Harvard Medical School.
Terrific.
I am now a neurosurgeon,
yes,
and I currently serve as the Vice Chairman of Academic Affairs at the University of California at San Diego.
Okay.
I'm a clinician. I treat my patients. I do surgeries on patients with brain tumors. I'm also a researcher.
Okay.
Part of the major problem that we face in neurosurgery is that our brain tumor patients remain limited in terms of their therapeutic options. And so I do a lot of research in terms of developing new strategies for them.
Okay.
I'm a teacher. I teach my training residents. I travel all throughout the world to teach neurosurgery.
Okay.
I am the father of 4 good-hearted and rambunctious little kids.
Okay, good.
And I have an amazingly supportive wife.
Okay, that's terrific. And tell us a little bit about, was born in Tainan, and you left Taiwan at the age of 11. How much do you remember about Tainan?
I remember a lot.
Okay.
And it was, to me, that period in my life was one of happiness and simplicity.
Okay.
We grew up in an era when there's 3 television stations.
Yes.
Where it's hard to imagine today, given the number of programming options. And I remember every day I look forward to the cartoon that's showing at 6 o'clock. And every step that I take closer to my home is a step closer to the cartoon, a step closer to my mom's dinner, a step closer to my father's smile.
Okay.
And every weekend I remember helping my mom shop at the farmer's market. And it's extraordinary. When I think back to that period of time, when you go into a market, everybody knows your name, and everyone treats you like family, and there's the Taiwanese delicacies. It is a time that I think back fondly and still remember with great fondness.
Okay. And every time when you come back to Taiwan, do you get the opportunity to go back to Tainan?
I do. I do.
Okay.
My parents still live in Tainan.
Terrific.
And I visit them, and we still go to the same farmer's market. And my mom still introduces me to her friends.
Okay.
And, these are people who see me grown from a little boy to now, 40-some.
Very established, yes.
Well, no, it's wonderful. It really is. And to me, Taiwan will always be home. We talk about, home. 我们讲人情味. It's wonderful.
Yes. And we understand that, Clark, you're back in Taiwan this time as one of the recipients for the 10 Outstanding Overseas Chinese Youth. And let me ask you, what does the award, the recognition, mean to you?
I'm deeply honored and humbled by the award. I'm honored to be amongst my peer of Taiwanese countrymen and countrywomen who's done so much and contributed to science, arts, and the humanities. I'm also humbled because I know there's so many more Taiwanese Americans and Taiwanese citizens out there who have made significant contributions. Most importantly, this is an opportunity for me to acknowledge the people who've made a difference in my life. And I really don't do this enough. No. It is a chance for me to thank them for inspiring me, to thank my parents for their selfless sacrifices, to thank my teachers for their invaluable teaching, to thank my wife for her unconditional support, and it really to thank my friends for standing by me throughout my life. And so this is an opportunity for me to express my gratitude to them.
Okay. And Clark, you said that you emigrated to the U.S. at the age of 11. I would suppose that was at the time when assimilation could have been a problem. Was it a problem for you when you were going to, middle school or senior high school?
I don't think I'm unique in the immigration experience. No. Mm-hmm. I think all of us who have immigrated have experienced the hardships of challenge of a language that you don't know, a culture that you're unfamiliar with.
Yes.
For me, I remember in the junior high and high school campus, there were bullies, and I actually had to study martial arts to defend myself.
Okay.
And it is through that experience that made me realize that you can't always count on the kindness of strangers. Mm-hmm. But when the kindness is there, it is precious.
Of course.
And in order to provide kindness to others, one must have the ability and the strength to be independent. Okay. And it also made me realize the hard work that's required to attain those skills that then will allow you to be kind to others. And so it was a self-discovery process that again, I think every immigrant goes through. Okay. And I think it's what makes the immigration process a strength for us.
Okay. And we understand that you have a very close, a very special relationship with both of your parents. Let's talk about your father first. I remember my information tells me that your father, gave up the opportunities to stay in Taiwan and move to the U.S. because they wanted to, give you more than what they had. And then the one thing that your father used to do was to read you a lot of the bedtime stories about his own personal struggles against insurmountable odds and how to, make you stronger, make you able to, face adversity and try to, strengthen yourself. And tell us a little bit about that experience.
My father is an amazing man.
Okay.
He never graduated from elementary school. Mm-hmm. And despite that, he taught himself how to read and write Chinese and Japanese.
That's very nice.
He built many successful companies. Okay. And the thing, every time I talk to him, and every time I see him, I could see the passion that he devotes to his companies and the pride that he takes when he talks about them. Mm-hmm. One thing that struck me when I was young, we used to walk through his companies, and whenever he sees something that needs to be done, a piece of trash on the floor, a giant equipment that needs to be moved, a tree that needs to be planted, he would stop and just do it. Okay. As a chairman, he doesn't have to do that. He could ask someone to order someone to do it, but he did it himself. And from that, I learned that when you're passionate about something, there's no details that are too trivial. That if something needs to be done, you need to do it yourself. Yes. Mm-hmm. And by doing that, he sets an example for me. And, much of my life, really, when I encounter hardships, I think back on what he taught me. And it is these lessons that really have helped me through the various challenges in my life.
Yes. And were there times, for example, Clark, when you're going to school, and like you said, there was, school bullies and things, when things did not really go your way, did you ever feel that, hey, Mom and Dad, why did you make this decision? We were happy in Thailand, and now we're here in the U.S., I'm not having a great time on campus, and people beat me up sometimes or take advantage of me. Do you have any regrets and things?
Now I don't.
Okay.
Now I don't. But I think in the immigration process, and I think I speak on behalf of the immigrants, that there are times that are challenging. Let me give you an example. Because I left Taiwan without studying English. I moved to the U.S. without really the fundamental understanding of the language. And so I had to catch up. Mm-hmm. So what I used to do is I used to go to school, participate in the various extracurricular activities, and I'll come home at about 6 or 7 at night. Okay. I will have my lunch or my dinner, and then I will actually go to sleep at about 8 p.m. I'll sleep between 8 and 12 and midnight, so I get my 4 hours of sleep. Okay. And I'll study between midnight all the way through and then go to school without any more sleep. It was a very exhausting schedule. Yeah. And the reason I could do that was because of my mom. She would sit next to me as I slept between 8 and 12. And she would wake me up every night to study. Okay. And what you talked about was exactly how I felt. There are nights when I felt I was so tired. I don't want to do this anymore.
No.
But my mom is always there to comfort me, to support me. When I get angry at her, I remember seeing tears in her eyes. But the next day, she would always be there for me, again, to support me and to wake me up. And from that, I learned that when you love someone, there is no hardship that's too difficult to endure, and that you just never give up.
No.
They don't say those things to me in words, but they've shown it to me in action.
Okay.
And again, I'm so deeply grateful because I would not be who I am without them.
Okay. And certainly your parents have instilled a lot of the important values and the areas they want you to be strong. And were there ever times, comes a time that you felt that, hey, maybe my parents are doing this for a purpose? They wanted me to be, having all these options, choices available that they never did. And then they're willing to sacrifice all this for me. And does that translate into how you are today to your 4 beautiful children and making the sacrifices without the kids even asking?
Well, I could only hope that my kids will see me the way I see my parents.
Okay, well, I'm sure they do. Yes.
As parents, we go to the ends of the earth for them.
Yes,
and I think that is just the way we should be.
Okay. Well, certainly you see that wonderful experience as taking, a tremendous impact on your life, and certainly it's passing on to the next generation. How about the relationship with your mom? You mentioned briefly about how she, stood by you when you were preparing for schoolwork, and then how she would wake you up at midnight every night and, accompany you while you were studying. And that is, a very special bond between any mother and the son. And tell me about what that relationship has meant to you.
I think that my mother has been with me at every step of the way in my academic journey.
Okay.
When we first moved to the United States, my grandparents, my grandma became sick. And there was a period of time when it was just my mother, myself, and my sister.
Okay.
And it was her strength of character that allowed us to get through that period of time. None of us spoke English.
No.
We memorized how many gas stations we passed by to make a right turn so we could get to supermarkets.
Okay.
And really, to have overcome that time of challenges requires her strength and her character. She's an amazing person. She has a near photographic memory. And she's a Buddhist, very devout Buddhist. And she could read a scripture and memorize it on a single read. And I think she would have been an extraordinary scholar if she was given a chance. Yeah. She, too, never had an opportunity to attend college. And when I was young, she used to put me to sleep and remind me that I should study all the things that she never had a chance to study.
Exactly.
And in fact, that was really the driving force for me becoming an MD PhD.
Yes. I understand that you went through some of the top universities and institutions in the United States. And besides your mom, was there any other driving force or motivation for you to pursue, top degrees at top universities?
Well, I've been very fortunate. I think a lot of these admission processes are highly whimsical, and I think many candidates who are qualified don't have a chance. And so I consider myself very fortunate. And in the same way, I've had wonderful teachers along the way who have taught me and inspired me.
Yes.
That showed me what it means when you can inspire young minds and what the potential is in the educational process.
Okay.
There are so many of these teachers. I think I would leave out their names if I were to go through one by one, but I'm deeply grateful to their teachings. And even today, I try to live up to their legacy by teaching my students.
Okay, I'm sure they know what you have accomplished so far, and they're very proud of you, I'm sure, Clark. And let me, shift the focus a little bit. Let's talk about, the local Orange County, Chinese, Taiwanese community. You've certainly been very active within the community. And tell us a little bit about your involvement with the community affairs and then with some of the activities that you have done.
Well, one of the things I'm most proud of was that in 2013,
yes.
I organized a meeting of minds, a seminar that involved the Taiwanese scholars within the San Diego, Orange County area.
Okay.
That meeting was sponsored by the Taiwanese Science Council.
Okay.
And the idea was to bring together like-minded minds from different disciplines with the goal of developing new technologies that will allow us to help our patients better.
Okay.
And through that experience, I had a chance to meet the leaders in science, in medicine, that are Taiwanese. And I was just amazed at how much contribution that we as a country have made to the sciences.
Okay.
I've befriended many of these colleagues, and their friendship is something I still treasure deeply.
Okay. And how about, outside the academic circles, for some of the community-based activities, for example, on Chinese New Year, on some of the festive occasions, what would be some of the activities that the community does?
Well, there's celebration events all throughout, and I have to confess, because of my clinical schedule,
yes.
I have very limited time
to participate.
But it is wonderful to see the thriving communities when I participate, and I really should make more time. The problem is, as a physician,
yes.
your time is not yours.
Exactly.
And when a patient
You're on
calls,
call.
exactly.
Yes.
Even before coming back on this trip, a friend of mine calls me and says, my husband has a brain tumor. Can you operate on him? And we made every effort to make sure I operate and make sure he does very well before coming back. But that meant there are times that I just can't spend doing something else.
No.
And so as a physician, our obligations to our patients first. And so, but when I participate in the events, it's just wonderful to see the thriving communities and to see the contributions that we've made overseas.
Okay. And Clark, you play many different roles in your career. You're a professor, and you're also an administrator, and you're also a physician, neurosurgery. Which role do you enjoy the best, and why?
I enjoy all of the roles. I think they're very important.
They're very demanding, each one of them. Yes.
It's been a pleasure to have the opportunity to help my patients through surgery.
Okay.
I'm a musician myself. I play the piano.
Good.
And there's something that's extremely satisfying when you use your hands to do something good. You can see the outcome. It may be the farmer. I came from a long line of farmers. It may be that satisfaction of seeing something produced by one's hand. So the neurosurgery and this research are eminently important to me because that's what that is.
Okay.
This research allows one to expand the mind and meet the smartest people in the world. And that's important. The teaching aspect, gosh, seeing my students, many of my students came back to Taiwan and assumed leadership roles in what they do, and that is extremely satisfying. And I think the administrative part is something that we don't frequently talk about, but it's extraordinarily important.
Yes.
Because that is the part that allows you to set the stage to make sure that the next generation of physicians, scientists succeed. It is actually a role that requires a tremendous amount of self-sacrifice and requires someone who has a vision of what is to come and what is needed in order to make that happen for our next generation of scientists and surgeons and physicians.
All right. Were there ever times that, maybe Clark, talk with your parents, talk with your family, and thinking that, hey, I have too many things on my plate. I got to be a husband, to my family. I got to be, son to my parents. I got to be a professor to my students. I got to be a physician, a surgeon to my, patients. I got to also be responsible for my staff members in university departments. Were there ever times that you felt, hey, maybe I need a little better balance in life?
I think balance is the key word. I think that all of us who are given opportunities have the responsibility to make sure those opportunities are not wasted. And it is inevitable that at some point that responsibilities clash.
Of course.
And I always tell my students and my wife that I feel like I'm Sisyphus in the Greek mythology, where Sisyphus is trapped on the bottom of a hill, and there's these balls rolling down, and his job, his torture, it was to push up the balls as they come down. And in fact, there are days when you feel like there are different responsibilities coming down, and you just have to push them up one at a time. And I think what's allowed me to succeed and to deal with these challenges is my wife, whose support is unconditional. And I tell my friends that I can't be who I am without her, because she's the one who shepherds the kids, oversees their homework. She's the one who, when I called the last minute and I committed to an activity and I said, I'm sorry, I can't have a patient, she absolutely understands. And I am so grateful that I have her support, because at the end of the day, you're right. If you're one individual amongst all of the responsibilities, it is very difficult to fulfill all of them.
Yes, of
But
course.
when there's a team of like-minded people, then I think it's absolutely doable.
Yeah, and also you're very lucky in the sense that your family is very supportive,
Absolutely.
very understanding. And then seeing the different roles that the father plays. How about your kids? I mean, do they ever come up to you and say, "Hey, Daddy, I want to grow up unlike you. I want to have a better balanced life"?
It's funny. The first word that my first son learned to say was "Goodbye, Daddy," because I leave him so frequently. And the doctors wear scrubs in the hospital. Yes. And I used to sleep on the couch because I didn't have time to change. My son thought that these scrubs are my pajamas. Okay. Right. So there are a certain sense that they do see what I go through. Okay. But what I hope that they would gather from this is the same way I see my dad working tirelessly. I didn't get the sense that I don't want to be like him because it was too demanding. Okay. I see the pride in his eyes, and I say, when I grow up, I want that sense of pride in my life. Okay. And I hope that my sons will see me as I am, and see the satisfactions that I derive from doing what I do. And I hope that whatever it is that they do, they have that sense of pride, because that's what sustains us. And that's what allows us to move forward. And I hope that they will be better than me. You see, I think there's no greater pride for a parent than to see your kids surpass your accomplishments. Exactly. And I hope that they will surpass my accomplishments. Yeah, I'm sure that your children, your wife, will understand the kinds of things that you're doing, not just only for the benefits of your family only, but also for a bigger community, whether it's the Taiwanese community in Orange County, or it's the university community, or it's among the hospital community. I'm sure they will understand. Yes. Well, I certainly hope so. Yes. Let's talk a little bit about another side of your responsibility, which is coming back often to Taiwan to give lectures to neurosurgeons, to scientists from different fields, and to get some feedback and exchanges with the local scientific community. Tell us a little bit about that experience. Well, as a Taiwanese, I feel that it's very important for me to share what I've learned in my research and my surgery with my countrymen. And so I was very fortunate to have met the chairman of Qimei Hospital. I've made many friends with professors at Rongzhong, Taida. And I was, because of their vision of teaching our surgeons, they've invited me back, and I have come back and lectured students. And it's extremely satisfying when I see these students in international meetings as they contribute to the global scientific community. I've also sponsored physicians to study under me at both Harvard Medical School and now at San Diego. And they have also returned to Taiwan and also assumed leadership positions in their various capacities. I think it's very important in today's world to continue to expose ourselves to the international standards of scientific and medical conduct so that we can actively contribute to this global growth as a nation. All right. And let me ask you about another phenomenon that we've been, hearing reports about, which is that among some of the top universities and colleges in Taiwan, graduating students, they may not necessarily have plans to go overseas to study for graduate training, like the days when you and I were, college students. And the number
of overseas students from Taiwan in the U.S., as a matter of fact, has been declining in recent years. What is your interpretation on this particular development?
Well, in some ways, I think this reflects the tremendous development of sciences and medicine in Taiwan as well.
Okay.
I mean, I think that we are practicing medicine and science at the international standard, at the highest standard. And in fact, many of the developing countries around us send their scholars to study in Taiwan.
Yes.
Also, the development of the internet has allowed some aspects of learning without actually traveling to a different country. So I think those are major contributing factors that are good. Nevertheless, I think there is a great value for our students, our scholars, our most talented people to travel abroad, to immerse in the academic cultures of the leading institutions.
Yes.
Because there is something that is intangible that you can't learn from the internet, that you can't learn from the books. There is a structure and a culture that one inherits. There are worldviews that one accesses when one studies abroad. So I would encourage our talents to continue to devote some amount of their time to the world. And there's a phrase in Chinese, 井底之蛙. We never want to fall into that trap.
No.
We want to be the ones we could see the world and see the broad skies. And to do that, we must dedicate a certain amount of time. And I think that a large part of the solution is the recognition of the need for this. And for our government, for our communities, to really celebrate, as it was once.
Yes.
When I was young, I looked up to the people who studied abroad.
Yes.
I wanted to be like them. And we need to reinstill that value and culture within our society.
And we also have a development or recent phenomenon in Taiwan, which is that many of the top medical students will shy away from some of the practices, medical practice, that could carry potentially some serious legal liabilities. For example, a lot more people do not want to get into surgery. A lot of people will not want to be involved in emergency room, and then we unable, apparently, to retain, attract more talent into those fields. Let me ask you, Clark, two things. First, is that also the case in the U.S. or other parts of the world that you know of? And secondly, if that's the case elsewhere, what can you recommend to Taiwan that we do to try to reverse, this trend and try to retain these talents, these top talents in these fields that we desperately need very bright people?
This is a very important question. Again, the Taiwanese scientific development and medical development is something that's very important to me personally.
Yes.
A country cannot thrive if it cannot provide the most fundamental of human rights, which is healthcare. And so I was very despaired in the recent trips when I learned these phenomenon. And I understand why this is. I think there is gross inequities in terms of reimbursement. Certainly, we do not become physicians
just to make money.
From financial reasons. That is not the primary impetus of why people become physicians. But when there's such gross inequity, human are human. And they will necessarily gravitate toward whatever policy, governmental or societal or communities policies that rewards certain types of behavior and services. And so I think a major part of it is that there's a gross inequity, and that needs to be corrected. There's also the issue of mission. That is, I grew up with words like 救人一命胜造七级浮屠. There is a mission within physicians that we need to reinstill, that we should inspire, right? The teachers, the communities need to highlight the values that we hold dear, right? Above and beyond that financial compensation. And then there's a whole medical legal side, right? As our society becomes more developed, there is the legal aspect of the risks that we take. And I think as a society, we need to understand that these physicians are working overtimes to ensure our safety, and that we as physicians are human, and that there are certain things that we as humans cannot yet overcome, and be accepting of the fact that physicians are doing their best despite poor outcomes. So I think this is a multifactorial issue, but I think this is an eminently important issue if our society were to move forward. Again, we cannot prosper as a society if we cannot succeed into providing the best health care in the world. Now, does this happen elsewhere? Not really. Not really. I mean,
what's the case in the U.S.?
In the United States, there are no issues in terms of recruiting surgeons, emergency doctors, obstetrics or gynecology. We do not see that. And the question, again, is we need to look outward in terms of what structures, what societal policies and governmental policies are different. And we also need to look inward. What has changed within the values that we inspire onto our next generation, such that they don't want to take on these important tasks.
And another thing that people been saying is that we don't really have a very well-defined legal framework to support and protect whether it's the rights of the physicians or the protection for the patients. Do you think that's the case where Taiwan is aware that there is a problem, and then we are doing things about it? We're making steady progress towards the end.
I actually don't know the specifics of what has been done in terms of fixing the problem. I know that the temporary patch was a financial one. And I'm not sure that's going to be a long-term solution.
No.
Because what the temporary patches of giving money to certain departments will just sustain the current members. And all the practicing members of the medical society will eventually retire. So, and I haven't personally been involved in any legal matters in Taiwan, so I don't know the exact legal framework. But there does need to be, right, a framework that really allows well-meaning physicians to do their best without consequences. So, for example, in Florida, there are laws in the state that caps what is your legal liability if something were to go wrong. Now, you could argue both ways in terms of, well, what if something really bad happens, but that cap doesn't really compensate the patient? But on the other side, that does protect on some level the physicians in a way that specialty remains very attractive. And these kind of cap systems, again, I'm not advocating for them, but there is one. This is one of the many considerations, right? And I think you're right that if there is not a well-defined legal structure, there needs to be.
Yes, and certainly, for example, Taiwan's national health insurance is something that a lot of people give credits to. Certainly, it set an example for some of the other countries. Maybe take some, lessons from Taiwan. Yes.
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. I think it's wonderful that there is, global insurance for all Taiwanese citizens. I think that's something that Taiwan should be very proud of.
Yes. Clark, we understand that you are a recognized, medical, physician in the field of oncology, and then also in terms of the treatment of cancer. Can you share with us your ongoing research in those areas? What are some of the new, discoveries that you have found recently?
Well, this is not a scientific forum, so I'm going to speak in very simple and plain terms. We used to think of cancer as a single population of cells that are identical to one another. And if you were to just be able to kill these tumor cells, you could cure the patient. That's what we used to think. And from the work of our laboratory and many other laboratories, we've now come to appreciate that these cancer cells are very different, even within the same patient, within the same cancer. That is, you and I, for example, are both Taiwanese, but yet you and I are so different. You attended Berkeley, I attended Stanford, and we have different habits and strengths and weaknesses. In the same way, within a population of cancer cells, within the same patient, the cells are very different. Moreover, what we've learned is that these cells could evolve and change just like you and me. And what that means is a therapy that works at one point for a particular cancer cell may not be effective anymore at a later time point. Okay. So this is an enormously complicated problem that we've now understand, and more we visualize not just a cancer as a clump of the same cells, but a community of different cells that helps one another and that helps its growth. And so in that context, any therapeutic development will require some form of combination therapy that targets key nodes
at different
stages of the cancer. Okay. And that's what our work in our laboratory is to really identify the kind of combination that would be helpful to our patients.
All right.
In the past, there was a time when we thought that if we just identified the mutations, the cause of the cancer, we could cure it. But that's not the case. That single mutation changes the cancer in a way that produces a whole community of cancer cells. And we have to be able to rationally play chess, if you will, with that community, make one move and another move, and to corner it into a way that can no longer sustain its growth. And we're making various headways in that direction.
All right. So does that mean in the future, when you treat a patient with cancer, that you need to maybe come up with a combination of different, medicine, different kind of, therapies, in order to treat the different kinds or different stages of the cancer cell?
Absolutely, absolutely. Okay. For example, the idea of immunotherapy is very exciting right now.
Yes.
And it's teaching your own immune system to attack the tumor.
Exactly.
That will certainly be a part of the solution.
All right.
Understanding how our cancer cells interact with chemotherapy, how it becomes resistant, why do some cells live and other cells die.
Okay.
That, the chemotherapy itself will remain important. There are specific drugs that we develop that target select processes and select mutations. That's going to be very important. So from our recent publication, we realized that we need to combine these different classes and perhaps use them in different times in a rational way to help our patients.
Yeah, to be more effective.
That's right.
Yeah, all right. And let me ask you this, Clark. You've been coming back to Taiwan to give lectures and meeting new, neurosurgeons and scientists. What is the role that you foresee for Taiwan, to play in the continued pursuit of medical and scientific, discourse in the world community?
I think our culture is one that values achievement, scholarship, intellectual pursuits. That is the fundamental of our culture. And I think that we need to build on that foundation.
Yes.
I believe that we will continue to make major contributions to the arts and the sciences globally, because that's fundamentally who we are.
Okay.
I think that we could improve in terms of our support from the captains of our industry, in terms of governmental support, in advocating and establishing resources for the people who really want to make a contribution to the world. For example, the chairman of Samsung has created what is equivalent of the Nobel Prize for Korean citizens.
Yes.
Right. Every year, they identified a Korean national who's made significant contribution, and they acknowledge it. This is his legacy.
Yes.
And I very much love to see a similar legacy to recognize the Taiwanese, because we have so many talents who are making a difference in the world. And by acknowledging them, we set them as examples for our next generation of our kids, of our physicians, of our scientists.
Okay.
And I think that we as a heritage, Taiwanese as a heritage, is primed to further contribute and make impact in the scientific and arts.
Okay. And Clark, a lot of people say, Taiwan has made advances in the area of technology, medical sciences and things. What would be, some of the things that maybe you have picked up, during your frequent trips to Taiwan, that Taiwan needs to do better at? For example, fundamental scientific, schooling, teaching college students, some of the more, not so popular, areas or subjects. What would be the area, or one or two, that you would recommend?
I think the technical training here is superb. Okay. I think our students are next to none, outstanding.
All right.
what I perceive is almost, what I'm concerned about more is some loss of our traditional values, which I hold dear.
Okay.
I think that as a people, we need to remember where we came from.
Okay.
We need to remember the values that defined us, right? We can't completely imitate what we see in the world because we're not the world. We are Taiwanese.
Yes.
The values of frugal, not wasteful, conscientious. You know, it hurts me. When my father and I were sitting in the airport the last time I was here, and we looked, there was young kids who bought lots of food and then finished even a third of it.
Yeah, and throw away.
That's not Taiwanese.
No.
And that's not what we want for our kids in the future. So the problem isn't the technical development. It is not the exterior or the structure. It's internal. We need to continue, even though we are prosperous today, we need to remember the days when we weren't. We need to remember the sacrifices that generations of politicians and parents that led to what we have today, and to really value that and treasure that. And equally important, we need to think about what we want for our kids in the future. What kind of world do we want them to live in? How do we want them to inherit our legacy? And we need to think about ways for us to get to that end point. So, you know, I tell my friends that you know, remembrance of the past is really a way for us to connect us to the roots of our history that really sustains us. Right? There's great value to understand you're not alone. You're in this long history of a proud people, and you're playing your role in shaping that. And as we move forward, not only do we have to remember, we have to imagine. We have to imagine a future that will propel us to our destiny.
And Clark, the final question for about 3 minutes that we have left in the program. If younger students who are watching our program today, you know, say that, hey, you know, Dr. Chen has done very well. I want to be just like him. I want to be a researcher. I want to be a professor. I want to be a surgeon. You know, I want to be able to, you know, carry some administrative responsibilities. And what would be your advice to them? What would be your recommendation for them to be better prepared to do a similar career path like you?
You know, I think everybody's career path is going to be a little different. And there are... at the end of the day, what I would say is you need to identify what your true passions are. Because that passion will propel you, will drive you to achieve. A lot of the times what I see in students is they say one thing, but they really mean another.
That's right.
So it's absolutely critical to be self-conscious and be truthful about what it is that you really want in your life. For some people, this may not be the right career path. For me, a business career path would not be right. So the first step is really to just sit down and identify who you are, because that fundamentally drives who you will be. And a lot of that soul-searching process involves not just the person, but the people around you. Right? I like to think that we're almost like radio waves in the sky. We ground ourselves by various antennas. And those antennas are our parents, our friends, our colleagues. And it's important to seek their advice in terms of where you're going to make a difference in the world. And once that decision's made, it's important to take every opportunity to refine your skill sets. To not waste, to really treasure every experience, and to reflect. Because there is something to be learned from every success, and most importantly, every failure. So these are the more general advice I would offer the young audience of your program.
And if they want to pursue medicine, what would be some of the things they can do, for example, high school or middle school, to get better prepared for the medical training?
One of the most important things is to really have an experience of what you're getting into. One of the heartbreaking things that I see is when I see a student who's very talented, who ends up in medicine, but then drops out. So it's very important to actually gain the real life experiences in terms of what it might be like to be a physician. That's right. And that comes in several forms. And certainly volunteering is a very important aspect of it.
Oh, of course.
But you're not just watching, you're actually actively observing. You have to think, what would happen to me when a patient dies? How do you deal with that? Right? That's not something
those are not
people
easy.
Exactly. And to seek out mentors. To see the people who've done it. And to ask them.
How to do it.
Well, what it means.
Yes.
To be like that.
It's certainly been a pleasure to have you on the program, Clark, and I want to wish you all the best in your future personal and professional endeavors. Thank you very much.
Well, again, thank you for having me.
Thank you for watching our program today. I'll see you next time on MacroView Television. Thank you.